Guys, put your phones up and your assignments in.
Okay, I need a clarification here. Kids have cell phones before class.
Yeah, depending on the teacher, I think she has them put them in the pocket.
Is a phone hotel, as I call it.
Yes,
Okay,
once you start class.
Okay.
To the end of the hour.
okay, thank you. I just want to make sure I follow the rules.
Yes. Tomorrow morning, just so you guys know, you're gonna have a class meeting with, I don't know if it's Mr. Hobie and Mr. Ostad or just one of them. It's at 8:50. So, I'll kind of think about what we're gonna do tomorrow and I'll let you know, okay? But, I don't know if I'll try to teach a little bit and give you an assignment. I'm not sure. So I'll think about that. All right, so yesterday at the end, we solved equations. And today what we're gonna do is solve inequalities. So what it means to solve an inequality is just that it's gonna have either a greater than sign, a less than sign, a greater than and equal to, or a less than and equal to sign, okay? And really, when I do these, I solve them just like I would an equation, except there's two things you have to remember. The way I teach this is wherever my x's are, I always want my x on the left, because otherwise what would happen is you'd get an answer like this. And it's okay to do that. It's not wrong. You would just have to realize that if your answer is like this, you would read it that way and it would be x and this would actually be greater than or equal to 3. Or you could do this and then kind of switch it afterwards, switch these two and switch the sign. So because I think that's a little bit confusing, what I do is I just go ahead and I bring my x's to the left all the time. And then the other thing is, do you guys remember the rule with inequalities that if you multiply or divide by a negative, what do you have to do? So if you're doing like negative 5x is greater than 10, and you go to solve this, you would divide by negative 5. And what happens whenever you divide or multiply by a negative, you have to switch your sign. So it'd be x is less than a negative 2. Okay. When you go to do your graphing, there are some rules about that. So what they're going to do is have you solve it and then do a number line, okay? When you do your number line in your homework today, I'm gonna just have you guys always put 0. Unless this is 0, then maybe put another number there. But if it's not 0, put 0 and then put your -2. You don't have to do all the numbers, okay? Now, what the rule is with graphing these is if this is either less than or greater than, you're gonna have an open circle. Okay? If it's less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, you have a closed circle. So in this case, it's just less than, so I have an open circle, and it's less than, which means it's kind of like if you do it the way that I do, where you get the X on the left, whatever way the little arrow thing is pointing, that's where you're gonna shade. So it's pointing to the left. So what I do is I just make this big, and then I kind of do a squiggly in between. You can shade it, but just make sure I can tell which way you did it. If you ever wanted to check these, you could pick any number that's less than a -2, like -3, and you could go back and put it in here and see if it works. So -3, if I put that in there, -5 times -3 is a positive 15. And 15 is greater than 10. So then you would know that it works. But any number that's less than -2 would work in that original equation if you did it correct. All right, so let's try one. And again, the way that I do this is I always bring my x's to the left. So I would take this 10x and bring it over. How would I do that? Would I add it or subtract it? Subtract it, because this is kind of assumed to be positive. So we would do the opposite, which is subtraction. Okay. Now, 7x minus 10x is a -3x. And then I'd have my +9 is greater than or equal to, and then -12. And then I just keep solving it just like it's an equation, except if I have to multiply or divide by a negative. So what I would do next is subtract 9. And I'd get -3x is greater than or equal to -12 minus 9 is -21. Okay. And then I would divide by a -3. And what do I have to remember to do? Yep, I'd have to switch the sign, correct? So if this is greater than or equal to, it's going to be less than or equal to, and then -21 divided by a -3 is a positive 7. So now, again, if you were doing your own, you can just do a 0 and a 7 on your number line, okay? Mine I have here, so we're gonna go to 7. Do you guys think it's gonna be an open or closed circle? Closed. So we're gonna do a closed circle here. And if it's less than, notice the arrow is pointing to the left. So that means I make this big. And then I just shade. And you can do this a number of ways. Some people, instead of doing this, will just shade on the line, and that's okay. Some people will do this. And kind of put your arrow up there. So as long as I know where you shaded, you're fine. And again, if you pick any point in this region, so say you put 0 in that original, it should work. All right, so now if we look at this, we would have to distribute on both sides first, okay? So I distribute here and I distribute there, okay? Now, don't get confused. Like here, I am multiplying by a negative, but I only switch the sign. I explain this, like if I'm multiplying by a negative to clear out an X. Here I'm just kind of distributing on one side, then you're okay. It's when you go to solve for X, if you ever have to divide or multiply, that you switch that sign. So first I'm gonna just distribute. Negative 5 times 3D is negative 15D. Negative 5 times negative 7 is positive 35. 3 times 2D is 6D. And 3 times 14 is 42. Again, I always bring my variable to the left. So I'm going to bring this 60 over. Right now it's assumed to be positive. So you do the opposite, which would be to subtract it. Negative 15D minus 6D is going to be negative 21D. And if you're somebody that it's hard for you to do mental math with positives and negatives, you can just go on any calculator and go like negative 15 minus 6, because that's what that was. And it'll tell you what it is. So if you're not positive, you can always check it on there. Then I still have that plus 35, and it's greater than 42. And then I'm just going to keep solving. So I want to get rid of this next. So I'm going to subtract 35. And then I have negative 21D is greater than 7. Then I'm going to divide by a negative 21. Okay. What do I have to remember when I divide by a negative? Switch my sign. So this is going to become less than. And 7 divided by negative 21, you could reduce that fraction. And I think I showed you guys this yesterday. If you're on a graphing calculator, if you go 7 divided by negative 21, it should let us. So if you go to math and then do enter, it will reduce it. Or what you can do is just go 7 divided by negative 21 and put it as a decimal. That's fine too. Okay. So this is going to be either negative 1/3 or negative 0.33. So when I go to do this, negative 1/3 is going to be just 1/3 of the way between 0 and negative 1. And should I have an open circle or a closed circle? Open. So I'm going to have this little open circle here. And then it's less than again. So it's pointing towards the left. So I shade here. And then just shade in between. So today is a day that you're really going to be graded for work. So you need to show work. I do have my key up here, so you can always put your answers up here. And at the end of the hour, if you're not done and you wanted to take a picture of them, once you get your phone, you can do that too. All right, so if we look at number 3, this one is a little bit different. So when you have an equation like that, that has a number on the bottom on one of the sides, what I would do is I would try to clear that 6 out so that it's no longer there. And how you do that is you would multiply both sides by 6. Okay, so whatever number is on the bottom, just multiply both sides by that. Okay, so on this side, and if in that case, if you were multiplying by a -6 on both sides, you would have to flip the sign. But here we don't have to because it's positive. So 6 times -4c is -24c. Now, what happens on this side is these sixes just cancel because you have one on top and one on the bottom. And then it's 5c plus 58. Now, again, I always bring my variables to the left. So I'm going to subtract 5c. -24c minus 5c is -29c. And it's less than or equal to 58. Okay. Now, this is -29 times c, so I'm going to divide by -29. Do I have to do anything with my sign on this one? Two, right? Because I divided by a negative. So it's greater than or equal to, and if you put this in your calculator, it'd be a -2. I don't know. Yeah, we are shading this. So I would go to -2 because it's greater than and equal to. I'm going to have a closed circle at -2. It's greater than, and notice that arrow is pointing towards the right. So we have to go to the right on this. All right. So if you look here, here's another one that has a number on the bottom on one side. So again, what I would do is I would multiply both sides by that -3, and then that would cross, or it would clear that -3 out. Now, I'm multiplying by a -3 on both sides. I'm not just distributing on one side a negative, I'm multiplying by negative on both sides. That's when you have to switch your sign. So when I'm doing this, I do have to switch my sign. Here, my -3's cancel, and I have x minus 2. And then over here, this would be a +6. Now it's so much easier to do. Now I just have to add 2. And x would be greater than or equal to 8. So if I go to 8, it would be closed because it's equal to, and it's greater than, and you just shade it between. Now, if we look at this one, we would have to multiply both sides by 4. You guys feel okay about that? Do you feel like you need to see one like this? Okay, let's skip this one and go to this one. Okay. Now, in this one, it looks like it's W divided by, or I'm sorry, a -W divided by -4. What I would do if I were you is I would put the negative with either your W or your 4, and I'm going to put it with the 4. So when you have a negative in front of a fraction, it can go with the top or the bottom, and I'm going to put it on the bottom. And then the other side will just stay the same. Okay. And then again, what I want to do is clear out that -4. And to do that, I'm going to multiply both sides by a -4. Now, because I'm multiplying both sides by a negative, I have to switch this sign. Okay. Here, I have a -4 on top and bottom, so those clear out, and I'm left with W. And then here, I have to distribute. -4 times -4W is positive 16W. -4 times a positive 5 is a -20. Okay. Now I just need to get my W's on the same side, and I always bring it to the left. This is right now a positive 16W, so we're going to subtract 16W. 1W minus 16W is a negative 15W. And then over here, I have negative 20. I divide by a negative 15. Would I switch my sign on this one? I would, because I'm dividing both sides by a negative. So it'd be less than or equal to, okay? Now, on a calculator, you can just go negative 20 divided by negative 15 and get 1.3 repeating. Or if you have a graphing one, you can go negative 15 divided by negative 20 and then go math, enter, enter. And I do have some graphing calculators in that bottom drawer if you want to use one. So this would be either 3/4 or no, I think I divided that wrong. These two should have been switched. It should have been negative 20 divided by negative 15. Math, enter, enter. So it's either 4/3 or 1.33. I put these in the wrong order. So 1.33 or 4/3. Then I come down and I go to graph that. 1.3 would be just 1/3 of the way over 1, and it's going to be a closed circle. So I'm just going to make a smaller one there. And it's less than, so I make this bigger. And then do you guys feel pretty good about this time? Everybody okay? All right. So let's go, oh, I already asked you that on that one. Okay. So another thing that they will do today is they'll write an expression out and you have to first take that expression and put numbers and addition, subtraction, and then the hardest part probably is knowing what sign to put, okay? I think you all would be fine with less than and greater than. If they say at least, so if you said, I want at least 5 pizzas, that means you'd be okay with 5, but you could also get more. If you said, I want at most 5 pizzas, that means that you'd be okay with 5, but you could also get less. So that's why it's less than or equal. If you said no more than, that means that you want no more than 5. So again, it would be less than. So you have, these 3 might be a little challenge, but kind of think of it that way to know which way the sign goes. So this first one says define a variable and write an inequality for each and then solve it. So we're just going to go through and write the inequality because I think we solved enough, but it says 19 more than 3 times the number. How would I write 3 times the number? 3x. Now let's do 19 more than that. With more than, do you all know that's plus? I can put plus 19 at the end or 19 plus at the beginning. With addition, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to go plus 19 is at most. Okay. So if you're doing, say that your parents say, put at most $10 gas in your car. Okay. Does that mean it can be greater than 10 or it can be less than 10? Less than, right? At most means they don't want you to do any more than that, but you could do less. So be less than or equal to 12. So I just asked that way. I know here you have your chart, but like when you get to the quiz, you wouldn't have the chart. Okay, so now you can solve that. That one's an easy one. We won't solve it. We'll just set it up for this. Then it says 4 times the sum of twice the number and -3. Okay, we'll worry about the 4 times in a second. How would I write twice the number, first of all? Twice the number would be 2x, okay? How would I write the sum of this and -3? Sum means add, right? So plus a -3. So the sum of twice a number and -3. And then we have to go back and do 4 times that. Do you remember what we talked about yesterday? How do I make sure to go 4 times this? Use parentheses, good. And then it's less than, which I think all of you would know that, 5.5 times the same number. Okay, so that would just be 5.5x. The only thing I'll just show you really quick that I would do on, well, it might help you. Do you guys know in math, if you have a plus and a minus, that's really just minus. If you have 2 negatives in a row, it becomes plus. But if you have plus a minus, then it's minus. And I think you guys can do that from here. Well, actually, I should show you this one, because this is a little bit different. 4 times 2x is 8x. 4 times a -3 is -12. And the reason this one is a little bit yucky is for all of these, I've been telling you to bring the x here, okay? But then you'd have to bring your -12 to that side. So that's kind of yucky. So you'd bring your 5.5x over. Okay, 8.5 or 8x minus 5.5x is 2.5x. And you still have your -12, and 5.5x minus 5.5x is 0. So now I have my x where I want it, so I have to bring that 12 over, so I'd add 12. So I get 2.5x is less than 12, and then divide by 2.5. Okay. So yeah, that's kind of yucky when you have just one x here. You'd still bring that over, but then you'd have to bring your constant back. All right, so your assignment today is right here. Again, I'll have my book open if you want to check your answers. And then 5 minutes before the bell, you can grab your phones. There's no bells today, by the way, because you know how it's so hot upstairs? Some of those classrooms are going to go like to the auditorium and the breakout room in the middle school, or even like if a middle school teacher has prep, some of the classes are going over there. So because of that, they're not doing bells. So